The New Zealand Land Safety Code highlights 5 essential steps for outdoor safety. Choose the right trip for you, understand the weather, pack warm clothes and extra food, share your plans and takeaways to get help, and take care of yourself and others. But what happens when these steps are ignored? Our first story shows the dangers of separating from a group in unfamiliar places. Staying with someone or a group can make all the difference. In the second story, we learn how critical it is to check the weather and always bring appropriate clothing. Weather can change quickly, turning a hike into a dangerous situation. Finally, our third story highlights the importance of listening to local advice when visiting other countries. Locals often understand the area's risk better than anyone else. Ji Li was a 51-year-old woman from China who traveled to New Zealand with 3 friends for a 3-week vacation. They wanted to experience the natural beauty of New Zealand's outdoors. One of their plans was to hike part of the Tongariro Northern Circuit, one of New Zealand's great walks. These walks are multi-day tramping trails that allow people to explore New Zealand's unique landscapes. Tramping in New Zealand is similar to hiking in other countries. On the morning of October 18, 2019, the group arrived at Wakapapa village. This was their starting point for the hike. Their plan was to tramp to the Mga Te Popo Lower Taranaki Falls track, which was about 7 kilometers or 4 miles away. This hike was expected to take around an hour and a half. The group began their hike together, taking in the sights and enjoying the trail. After hiking for several hours, the group reached the Tama Lakes. It was at this point that they realized they had missed their turn. They were now several hours behind their intended location. The group stopped to discuss what they should do next. One of the women wasn't fit to continue, and one of them wasn't feeling well. After some discussion, the 3 friends decided to cancel their hike to Taranaki Falls and head back to Wakapapa village instead. However, Ji, the more experienced and fit, chose to continue on her own. At this point, it's unclear where Ji decided to go. She may have intended to continue to Taranaki Falls track or somewhere else, but this is not known. Witnesses later said that she went into the opposite direction of the group's original plan. Ji was described as an experienced hiker. She was dressed appropriately for the conditions and carried the necessary equipment, including a phone. However, she did not have a personal locator beacon, which could have helped her if she got lost. Based on later investigations, experts reconstructed what likely happened after Ji separated from her group. They believed that she continued along the Tongariro Northern Circuit and eventually arrived at the Oturere Hut. This hut is one of the many located along the Great Walks, designed to provide a place for trampers to rest safely. Ji stayed at the hut overnight. The following day, she continued her hike. She headed northwest towards the Red Crater, planning to descend through the Mga Te Popo Valley and return to Wakapapa village. However, the weather conditions that night had worsened significantly. A blizzard had swept through the area near Mount Tongariro, just north of Red Crater. Temperatures had dropped to -4 degrees Celsius or 24 degrees Fahrenheit, and the wind chill made it feel closer to -20 degrees Celsius or -4 degrees Fahrenheit. When Ji reached the Red Crater area, she was exposed to freezing temperatures and high winds. Although she was dressed appropriately, the wind chill and constant exposure to the cold began to take a toll on her. She started to feel cold and eventually developed symptoms of hypothermia. Hypothermia occurs when the body loses heat faster than it can produce, causing a drop in body temperature. This can impair decision-making and motor skills. As Ji's condition worsened, her ability to think clearly and make decisions was affected. In an effort to stay warm, she took out her sleeping bag. However, by this point, Ji was experiencing advanced hypothermia. She was unable to get inside the sleeping bag properly. When hypothermia progresses, it can lead to confusion and loss of motor control, making even simple tasks difficult. Unfortunately, Ji lost consciousness due to the effects of the cold and passed away. Later that day, Ji's friend reported her missing after she failed to return as planned. A search and rescue operation was launched. A helicopter was dispatched to search the trails in the area. It didn't take long for the search team to locate Xi's body. She was found below the red crater, partially inside her sleeping bag, but no longer alive. Later investigations showed that Xi had tried to protect herself from the cold, but was unable to do so effectively. She had managed to get only her head inside the sleeping bag. Her gloves and hat were found nearby, suggesting she had removed them, which is a common symptom of severe hypothermia, known as paradoxical undressing. This happens because hypothermia affects the brain, causing a person to feel overheated even when they are dangerously cold. The exact sequence of events leading to her death remains unclear, but experts believe that the decision to hike alone, extreme weather conditions, and the progression of hypothermia were the primary factors. Xi's case is a reminder of how quickly conditions can change in the outdoors and how even experienced hikers can face challenges beyond their control. On January 12, 2013, David Decaro, a 36-year-old father, went on a hike with his two sons, ages 10 and 8, and their family dog. They were staying at Brushy Creek Lodge in Reynolds County, Missouri, to celebrate David's wedding anniversary with his wife. The Ozark Trail, where they decided to hike, is a part of a long trail system that runs from St. Louis to Arkansas. It is known for its scenic views and challenging path. That Saturday morning, the weather was pleasant. The temperature was about 15 degrees Celsius, or 60 degrees Fahrenheit. It was warm enough for light clothing, which is what David and his two sons wore for the hike. David was an experienced hiker, so he was confident to bring his two sons with him on a hike. They were excited and in high spirits, enjoying the beautiful scenery of the trail. A couple hours into their hike, they encountered a passerby who offered them a ride back to town where their lodge was located. David declined the offer, saying they would make it back in time. Dark clouds were slowly starting to set in, but they were confident they could complete the hike safely. At this point, David didn't see any reason to think anything would go wrong. However, by the afternoon, the weather changed suddenly. A storm rolled in, bringing heavy rain and dropping the temperature to around 4 degrees Celsius or 40 degrees Fahrenheit. Within a short time, the family was caught in a downpour. They were soaked, and under these wet conditions, even moderate temperatures can quickly lead to hypothermia. Realizing the danger, David and his sons decided to head back to the lodge. Unfortunately, the trail offered little protection from the storm. There were no caves or other shelters nearby, and the trees did not provide enough cover from the rain. David had a flashlight and a phone with him, but it is believed that the rain either broke these devices or the batteries died. Without light or a working phone, they could not navigate effectively. As the rain continued, David and his sons became desperate to find shelter. They were already wet and cold, and their situation grew worse as the temperature continued to drop. While trying to make their way back, they missed a crucial turn on the trail that would lead them back to the lodge. The rain likely obstructed their view, making it difficult to see the markers. By this time, it was also getting dark, and with no flashlight or phone, the trail became almost impossible to follow. The Ozark Trail is known to be pitch dark at night, and the heavy rain only made the situation more challenging. Back at the lodge, David's wife started to worry when they had not returned by 4 p.m. She alerted the lodge staff, who quickly contacted the police. A search was organized and over 50 volunteers joined the effort. They searched the trail and the surrounding areas late into the night. However, the storm made the search dangerous. The risk of flash floods and the poor visibility forced the search to be postponed until daylight. By the following morning, temperatures had dropped below freezing. The chances of finding David and his sons alive were slim. The search resumed at first light, and it didn't take long before the rescue team found their cold, drenched bodies. David was pronounced dead at the scene. The cause of death was hypothermia. His two sons were rushed to the hospital, but despite efforts to revive them, they did not survive. The family's dog, however, managed to survive the ordeal and was found alive near the scene. This tragedy is a perfect example of how quickly a situation can turn dangerous, even for a short hike. The weather can change without warning, and light clothing that is appropriate for warm weather can become inadequate in wet and cold conditions. David's decision to turn down the offer for a ride back to the lodge earlier in the day seemed reasonable at the time. The weather wasn't too bad and they were enjoying the hike. However, as the weather worsened, their lack of shelter and functioning equipment made it impossible for them to find their way back. Missing the turn on the trail likely sealed their fate, as it delayed the return and left them exposed to the elements for too long. In December 2018, two Scandinavian women, 24-year-old Louisa Jespersen from Denmark and 27-year-old Maren Øland from Norway, arrived in Morocco. They were both students at the University of Southeastern Norway, studying outdoor life and recreation. Their goal was to become tour guides. Louisa and Maren were outdoor enthusiasts with a passion for nature and hiking. They were excited about their hiking trip to Morocco, where they planned to spend a month exploring the country and enjoying everything it had to offer. For the past 2 decades, Morocco has seen a significant increase in tourism. In 2018, the country set a record with 12 million tourists visiting. This boom in tourism was largely attributed to King Mohammed VI, who had prioritized tourism as a key source of income for the country. His efforts transformed cities like Marrakesh into tourist hubs. More recently, visitors have begun exploring Morocco's countryside to experience its local culture and natural landscapes. Louisa and Maren were among these travelers. Shortly after arriving in Morocco, the two women made their way to the village of Imlil, located at the base of Mount Toubkal. This village had become a popular starting point for hikers and tourists due to its proximity to the mountain. Imlil had transformed into a tourist-friendly village with accommodations and services to cater to the growing number of visitors. Mount Toubkal, standing at 13,600 feet, or 4,100 meters, is the highest peak in Morocco and North Africa. It had become a top destination for adventurous travelers. After spending a few days in Imlil to rest and enjoy the village, Louisa and Maren started their trek up the trail to Mount Toubkal on December 16th. According to local sources, the two women decided not to hire a guide for their hike. While the trail could be navigated by those experienced in reading maps, hiring a guide was strongly recommended. However, Louisa and Maren were confident in their abilities as experienced hikers and chose to go without one. Their journey began in the nearby village of Arumd, where the trail officially starts. The trail was not deserted. Many trekkers, guides, and locals saw Louisa and Maren during their hike. Witnesses described them as being in good spirits and enjoying their adventure. Along the way, they likely stopped at one of the tea houses or shops known as hangouts, located at lower elevations. These stops provide hikers with a chance to rest and refresh before continuing their journey. After hiking approximately 3 miles and reaching an elevation of 10,500 feet, the pair arrived at Refuge du Toubkal. This refuge serves as a safe haven for hikers, offering tea, hot showers, and a place to rest. Many hikers choose to stay overnight before continuing their climb. After the refuge, the trail becomes significantly more challenging, but Louisa and Maren, with their alpine hiking experience, were likely prepared for the difficulty. At the same time Louisa and Maren were hiking, 4 men were making their way up the opposite side of the trail. A guide who was accompanying tourists briefly encountered these men. After a short conversation, the men continued on their way. However, they were not properly dressed for the conditions and remained at lower elevations. One of the men eventually returned to the village. It is unclear whether Louisa and Maren reached the summit of Mount Toubkal. Moroccan officials believe that after their hike, the two women began descending the trail and arrived at one of the hangouts just after 4 p.m. Unfortunately, the shop had closed for the day as it gets darker in December around 5:30 p.m. By the time they reached the hangout, the sun had set and it was likely getting dark. About 30 minutes from the hangout, they would have reached the village or a room where they could have rented a place to stay for the night. For reasons unknown, Louisa and Marin decided not to continue to the village. Instead, they set up camp near the hangout and stayed one more night on the mountain. It was at this campsite, in the darkness, that 3 of the 4 men approached their tent and launched a vicious attack. The next morning, a group of hikers stumbled upon Louisa and Marin's campsite. Inside their tent, they discovered the bloody and mutilated bodies of the 2 friends. 2 days later, a video was posted online showing the horrifying attack on Louisa and Marin. In the video, one of the attackers claimed that the attack was in revenge for ISIS' defeat in Syria. The 4 men were ISIS sympathizers who had pledged allegiance to the group. Investigations later revealed that the men were part of a terrorist cell planning separate attacks in Morocco. However, the 4 men decided to act on their own, unable to wait for the larger plan. 4 days after the attack, Moroccan authorities apprehended the 4 suspects. The attack sent shockwaves around the world, deeply affecting Louisa and Marin's families. The incident also saddened and angered the Moroccan people, many of whom rely on tourism for their livelihood. One local guide expressed this sentiment, saying, "You might as well hurt yourself than hurt tourists." In a bid for justice, 3 of the men were sentenced to death, while the 4th received a life sentence. The attack on Louisa and Marin is a sad reminder of the unexpected dangers travelers can face. Most hikers worry about risks like bad weather, hypothermia, avalanches, or rock slides. Louisa and Marin could not have anticipated the danger they encountered. These 2 young women with a passion for the outdoors tragically lost their lives while pursuing their love of adventure. If you made it all the way at the end of the video, I would like to say thank you. It would really help the channel if you could click that like and subscribe button so that I can keep on improving and providing better videos. Again, thank you so much for watching.